Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So we're not on the all track today. We kind of wrapped up the all track with the phase one, our first task that we had with that car, which was getting it on the ground. So right now we are still trying, if you're following the all track series, we're still trying to get the brakes figured out. We have the spindles at a machine shop. We're just waiting to get those back and then we'll slap them up on the car. And then from there, we got to figure out the engine, which is a process. We're gonna have to get the engine, prep it, get wiring done, etc. before we can put it in. So in the interim, we're gonna have to add some additional content if you guys want to see, any activity on this channel. And what do we do best on this channel? MR2s. So what I have in front of me is we got a 2GR on my left, and we got some parts on my right, and we'll start off with an oil pan. So this is an oil pan for the 2GR FE. We got this very low mileage engine here, 43,000 miles, but with the way these guys handle it, they kind of dented the oil pan at the bottom. So we're going to take it off today. I'll show you the dent either before or after, but trust me, it's dented. And it's not terrible, but you figure the best way to do these things is when you have the engine outside of the car. So with that said, we decided to put a new pan on it. So we have not done a video on this channel with how to replace an oil pan on a 2GR FE, so that's what we're going to do. Now bear in mind, this is on a stand, so it's a little bit different if you're doing it in the engine, but you're gonna get the basic idea, show you exactly what steps are required, and hopefully it's helpful to you guys. Along with the pan, I got to do a new water pump. Again, one of those things while you're at it. So we'll do a water pump. If you follow the channel, we've done that before, but we figured, hey, I'm gonna do a quick video showing you how it's done. It's not gonna be too detailed on the water pump because I do have additional videos you can go back and watch for full detail if you'd like it. So oil pan, water pump, we're gonna change the oil filter since we're going to drain everything at this point, and new thermostat, and that's going to be the video for today. So without further delay, let's get started. Let's head over to the engine and let's get cranking. All right guys, well here is our 2GR FE. So this is a brand new engine to us. It is 43,000 miles, so this is a new project in case you're wondering. I'll show you the car it's going to go in, but for now we're focused on the engine. But just know this is a 2GR FE swap that we're doing on an MR2, so basically putting a V6 in. Once you see the car, you'll know the car. You've seen it on the channel before. It has a V6 already, but that one is given a bunch of issues that we can't figure out, so we figured we'll go with a new engine. So just for reference, the tensioner typically sits right here. So you want to remove that, and here are the bolts that I put in. So you want to take your tensioner off, because what we're going to start with, we're not going to do the oil pan first. We're going to do the water pump. And the reason why I'm doing it that way is there is water, that's coolant, that's going to be behind this thing. It's going to drain down, and what I don't want to do is change the oil pan and then have the sealant here and then the coolant drains on it. Probably not a big deal, but I'd rather work from top down, so that's what we're going to do. So we're going to take out the water pump, and then we're going to move on to oil pan. All right, so let's get going. The water pump section is going to be quick because there's a full detailed video, so just bear in mind this part we're going to go very quickly on it, okay? So first thing we're going to do is remove the pulley for the water pump. So 4 12mm bolts, just pull those, so we get those off, and then we're going to go work our way into all the water pump bolts. There's a bunch of 12mm and a bunch of 10mm. We're just going to pull that, and then this thing is going to come off. Now, perhaps I should say it's not just going to come off, because we got to move the thermostat housing first. So there are two 10mm here. We got to pull those, and then we got to lift this thing out of the way, because the water pump itself actually goes behind the thermostat. So there's a point of note, but essentially you're pulling the thermostat housing here. You're going to remove it out of the way. Then you're getting to our water pump, and then everything comes off. So let me put you on a time lapse now. Let's go. All right, so this is the thermostat housing, and sometimes you can actually just lift it and push it out of the way. But in my case, I just detached the hose up top here because trying to get this rubber out, this thing slipped out. It has this O-ring that seals it, and it was giving me a hard time. And I didn't want to risk, when we're putting it back in, to kind of force it with this hose connected to kind of like cut the rubber on the way in. So I just decided to take the whole thing off. So we're going to have to replace this O-ring, which comes in our water pump kit, and then there's another O-ring right here. So very important we don't forget these. So what we have now, you can see we have direct access to the water pump. We got all these 10mm bolts here. These are 12s. So we're just going to go around, pull it, and this whole water pump assembly is going to come off. There's a gasket in the back. We're going to replace both. And again, this feels very good, but it's just one of those things, while you're here, might as well just do it. At least you know you got a fresh water pump to work with. So yeah, once you pull the 12s, water will start leaking down. And honestly, that's the messiest part of it. Everything else is pretty smooth. All right, so I'll do this for demonstration, just so you know, if you try to keep your floor clean, this is the point where once you pull these 12mm bolts, you're gonna see it starts to weep. So the more you remove them, is the more you're gonna see water start popping out of this thing. So, and I got, yeah, so just have a bucket ready. So when you pull this thing, you're gonna actually have something to collect the water. Otherwise, you're gonna get your floor all dirty. And this is when the fountain really starts. So again, you see why if I put the sealant here, some coolant is going to get on it for the oil pan. So that's why I opted to just kind of wait and get the water pump done before I do the oil pan. All right, so just for reference, just to make sure you are not missing any bolts when you go back in, we got 8 of the 12mm bolts and we got 8 of the 10mm bolts. And one thing to point out, you see the sealant that's here? Just make sure you remove them, so when you tighten this thing down, it doesn't the sealant doesn't stop it from going all the way in. In my case, there's only one like that, but depending on if this job was done before, you might have more, so something to pay attention to. And then there's your water pump. It actually comes off by itself once you pull the bolts. It just drops right out. And normally these things, when they're bad, they're loose here. Again, this one feels pretty good, but you know, we just figured it's a used engine, we'll go ahead and replace it anyways. All right, here's our gasket. Let's take that off. All right, there's our gasket. And then what we're gonna do, this is pretty clean, but you just wanna make sure all these surfaces are clean before you put the new one on. And it's just a reverse process. But look at the inside of this engine, practically brand new, so it looks really nice. So this baby should run really good. Right, so if you got this far and you're wondering why we're doing this, we're basically just overhauling the engine since it's out. So as much as you can replace, so you don't have to try to figure that out after the engine is in the car, I recommend you do it. So with that said, there's a crank seal under here, so we're gonna also remove that. I obviously pulled this before, it's not that easy to pull, trust me. So you wanna get your crank pulley off. And normally these crank pulleys, I don't have a problem, they just slip right off. I rarely have to use a tool to get it off. But this crank seal, we're gonna replace that with a factory take-up piece as well. So we're gonna pop that out, and it will be water pump, crank seal, and then we're gonna go to oil pan. Here's a part number for a crank seal. So we're probably gonna replace this first since we got everything out of the way and we got a lot more space to work with. So we'll pop this out and pop in the new seal. All right, old seal out, new seal going in, and I'm gonna try to press it. It came out pretty easy, so I'm gonna try to press it in. I'll use this VRP rubber protectant to slide it in, and this will burn off with heat, unlike grease. Sometimes it sits in there because I want it to go in, and then once the heat gets to it, it just sits in. So again, these are always nerve-wracking. You're trying to get them in as smooth as you can, but the 2 jars so far have been very cooperative. I can push them in my hand by hand, and this one seems to be going really good. Oh wow, probably the easiest seal I've changed to date. Just went right in. Good old faithful, my little tool that I built to put seals in. Now this one went in by hand, but if you ever have a problem, you could always put something like this You can gently tap on it, or you can run a bolt through and just pull in the seal. In our case, it really went in without any issues, but you know, it's great to have. It works really well on the 5S and the 3S motors, and it doubles up on the 2GR if you need to. So the camera lady is telling me that I gotta tell you guys what this is. So it's just Home Depot. It's a drain pipe with a cover that I punched a hole in and just made a tool. So that's the part number. If you want to get one, and then you just find the corresponding cap that goes with it. I don't know what the part number and that is, but yeah. All right, crank seal done. Let's get the water pump on and torque down. So we cleaned up the surface and it was pretty clean to begin with. So we're gonna put the gasket, the indented section goes down, and you really can't screw this up because there's one way for this gasket to really go on. So you're gonna get it in, and then we're gonna slap our pump on, and then we are going to get our bolts and start putting them in. And as you can see, there's really no other way to put this in except this way, okay? So let's get one of our bolts. And I put some blue Loctite on these bolts just so they don't vibrate out. So we're gonna do this, and we're gonna start to get it on. Yeah, I definitely recommend you thread all of these in by hand before you start putting a wrench on them. It should go in nice and smooth. All right, so we put the water pump back on. We want to check to make sure it turns freely. It should not be binding or grinding or anything like that. New seal is in, new crank pulley goes on, 184 foot-pounds. Yep, that's so much it is, 184 foot-pounds on the crank pulley bolt. And then the 12 millimeter here, they're 15 foot-pounds. The smaller 10 millimeters, those are 7 foot-pounds. So 7 foot-pounds, 15 foot-pounds on the larger bolts for the water pump. Torque it evenly all around, and then you're done. We can get the pulley back on, can get our idler back on here. This is 40 foot-pounds, and then we'll get our tensioner back on in the front. And then from there, we're going to put our thermostat housing on. The bolts here, 7 foot-pounds, and the 2 bolts for the thermostat housing, 7 foot-pounds as well. And then we're done. So now we're going to move on to, I'm just going to button it up. You guys will see that, and then we're going to move on to the oil pan. All right, so now we're gonna move on to what I hope is not too crazy difficult. We have the tensioner put back on. I have the idler on. It has a little bit of a scratchy sound to it, and that could be just from dirt, but since we're gonna take the engine out of the other car and it has a 2GR, I'm gonna check that pulley to see if it's better. So we may use this one or we may use the other one, whichever is better. But the tensioner is very smooth, and it was in the same environment as obviously the upper pulley. But this one you hear a little bit of scratch on it, and this one you don't. So with that said, we'll move on to the oil pan. Crank pulley I'll put on later, and water pump, the pulley itself I'll put on later and torque those down. But let's get to the oil pan. It should be pretty simple. It's just a bunch of 10mm bolts and two 10mm nuts, and that's it for the oil pan. But the problem is sealed with the Toyota sealant, and breaking the pan off the lower block, that's what the challenge is. So we'll see. I'm gonna try to tap it with a dead blow hammer, but I don't want to hit it too much, and I certainly don't want to pry between the pan and the block here, or the upper oil pan and the lower oil pan. So we'll see how that goes. But so before we get to the oil pan, I'm just going to change the filter real quick. So there's a little plug on the bottom, and I guess it is on pretty tight. So there you go. But I guess I didn't supposed to pull this little bung in the inside, and instead I'm pulling the whole darn thing. So let's see. Shouldn't be that tight. There's an inner piece to pull, and then you pull this outer piece. There is a little plug on the bottom that you're supposed to pull, and as you can see, I was not able to pull it. I even used a chain wrench to lock this piece and try to pull it here, and it will not budge. So what that tells me is that this car was serviced, and whoever put that plug in either used an impact or something and locked in that screw. So I'm just gonna take the filter down. But what we'll probably end up doing is using the housing from the other engine, because this one, I'll show you what I'm talking about here in a second. Let me get this down. Normally you don't have to have this mess, because you would pull this piece. See that right there? This little plug, you would really just screw it out, and then there's this little tool that you would thread in there, and then this is how you drain the fluid before you take it on the filter. But in our case, this thing is stuck inside, and yeah, I don't want to, I tried putting pressure on it, and it obviously is not pulling, so I'm going to try it on the bench and see if I can get it off. If not, I'll probably use the one from the other engine. Alright, so here's what I think goes wrong when dealers service your car, because there's no in hell this thing should be this tight that I need a breaker bar. Jeez. Wow. Cannot get that plug to loose. I could just leave it, but we have the other one in the other car, so my goodness. Now that is crazy. Alright, so back to the regular scheduled programming. How you really should do this is you pull this plug, alright, and let me get this. So you pull this plug out, and then what would happen is you would screw this thing in like so. So this would still be in here, assuming this is still in here. Here, let me show you. And then when you push up on this thing, it opens the line there and the fluid drains down, so it doesn't create a mess like what we had to do here. But clearly, somebody over tightened that plug. And you guys saw the effort. I'm breathing hard because I had to put muscle into that thing. So they definitely torqued the crap out of this thing here. So yeah, so for what it's worth, I'm probably not going to put up the filter. I think I'll probably be safer using the one that's coming off the donor, the old engine, and rather than doing this, because whatever, I just feel better about it. So yeah, now we're going to drop the pan. This part is just pulling like a crap load of 10mm bolts and two nuts, so I'm just going to pull them, time lapse it, and then we're going to knock this pan to see if we'll break it loose, or just try to cut the sealant between the pan and the lower oil pan and the upper oil pan, and that's it. Wish me luck. Is you got to drain the oil, so do not attempt to drop your oil pan with the engine full of oil. So there really wasn't much to drain here because the engine came without oil. Just a little bit residual, as you saw when we dropped the filter. So there you go. If you're curious how many nuts and bolts, so we got 20, actually, yeah, 4 4s, 16 bolts and 2 nuts. So a total of 18. So this is a part that can get kind of messy because I am going to attempt to, I don't want to pry between here because I don't want to damage our oil pan. I'm just going to try to tap, put on the lip here and just kind of tap down. But as you can see, this oil pan is pretty much in place. Now I'm not worried about damaging this portion of the pan because it's already damaged or replacing it. So I'm just gonna knock it and see if that kind of helps to move it. Just trying to break the seal. We can use a blade and just kind of cut through the sealant. And I've done this on the 5S engine. Took me forever, but did work. You just gotta have a lot of patience, but I'd rather have patience than damage the upper oil pan because we're trying to fix this, not break it. All right, so last resort, I'm trying to obviously be gentle with this thing, and gentle is kind of working, but it's working very slowly. So I figured I'd use this trim tool for interior. So I can hammer it and it won't damage anything and it will just cut through the sealant, which it seems to be doing a good job of. So you could also use like a spatula, but I think I'm getting some good progress with this right now. So yeah, we're just gonna keep at this. And that's the hardest part really, guys, just trying to separate the pan. So I finally tapped with this thing. Break this side loose and there it is, coming loose. And we got a lot of oil in there still, so you gotta be careful so you don't mess up yourself. Oh, there you go, see? Still a crap load of oil inside here. And I drained it a couple times. But yeah. So there you go, that's all the oil even after draining the oil. So there's quite a lot that's still inside there. So now we got the pan down. We'll check, see what's going on underneath here. Everything should be fine. But I'll show you guys now that we have the pan down. Right here, see that little crease? So it was dented in and we just figured, okay, it's probably a better idea to just replace this whole thing. Crease right here, so one of these baffles obviously kind of got bent up. Doesn't look too bad, but you know, while you're at it, just to get it done. So we're replacing it. It's final. It's off already, but that's it. All right, guys, so I flipped the engine. I could clean this off. You got to get all of this old sealant off. So I'm using a plastic blade so I don't mar the surface. And just gotta take your time and patience and just clean away until you get this thing nice and clean. The good news is we're using a new pan, so the other side is good. And then we'll apply the Toyota sealant and then we'll button this thing back up. So I did take the studs out. There are 2 studs in here with that the 2 nuts came off of. So I took it out just because I was trying to hammer the pan and can't really hammer the pan with 2 studs in there. So I'll replace those. I did mark on the block where they came from. So I put it back to this red spot. So one is here and one is on the other side. So I recommend you guys do the same if you're doing this. And yeah, we're just gonna clean up, put the sealant in and torque these bolts back down, and that's your oil pan. So there you have it, guys. We did the oil pan, cleaned it up, and now I'm gonna go ahead and use my blade here and just kind of finish up the oil pan, the new one. I'm gonna clean it off. And I'm wiping it with some alcohol right here just to kind of get off any grease and grime, and really just gonna get this oil pan ready to go. It does take some time to prepare the space, but as you can see, everything looks nice and clean. Got to clean up all the old sealant that's around the pan. That's really what's going to give you a good sealing surface. So just go ahead and do that. I did remove those studs. It just makes life a lot easier to clean up, and then I went ahead and put them back in. So now we're just going to clean this thing up, and then we're going to move on over to the new oil pan, where we're gonna have to get the new sealant put on, and we're gonna take our time, just get a nice bead going around the pan. So I'll show you guys what that looks like, but yeah, for now this is where we are. So let's head on over to the pan and let's get that area prepped and ready to go. So here I have my Toyota sealant, which is the Sealant Pack 103 FPIG, as they say. Really good sealant. I mean, you saw how hard it was to take the pan off, so it works really well. So, there is an expiration date on these things, so you got to check that out. Make sure your sealant is not expired. Otherwise, it may not seal adequately. So, it's a huge tube, and a lot of times you buy these, you use it once for the pan, and then next time you're going to use it, the sealant is not good because it expires. So, always check your expiration. And then I cut the tip just to get a nice little bead. It's like 3 to 4 millimeters that we're trying to get put around this pan. So, yeah, that's the prep work. Now we're going to go ahead and start laying this bead around. I like to go around the edges and then go on the inside of the holes around the pan. So let's get started. And here I am putting down the bead, trying to be careful. You gotta have a steady hand, and as you can see, I go on the inside of the hole, right where the bolts go in, so that way once it locks down, you're gonna get a good seal there. So all you gotta do is just take your time. It takes a little bit patience, and I know we all want to get this done very quickly, but the slower and steady you go, the better the results are going to be. So like you see here, just take your time. It will work out. You don't need too much, you don't need too little, you just need enough to get this thing working properly. So I'm almost done, and we're going to close the gap here. And once you have the full bead around, in about 3 to 4 minutes, it's time to get it snapped up under the engine. So let's take this thing, and now we're gonna line it up on the bottom of the engine. Try to, be as precise as you can. The 2 studs are there. So you wanna do is hold it in a position where you're right over the studs, and then you just push up, because if you kind of get it lean and you gotta pull it off and it slides, then you're gonna mess up the sealant. Just not gonna get a good clean finish. So I was able to do that. Now I'm gonna throw in the bolts or the nuts. There are 2 nuts here for these studs. So we use those first, get those locked in place. And then after that, you go ahead and just throw in the multitude of 10 millimeter bolts that this pan takes. So I like to go around systematically, each corner. If I go top right, then I go bottom left, and then top left and bottom right, just so I get the pressure applied evenly on the sealant, so it locks in place. And that's worked well for me in the past, so I'd recommend you do it. You can't just tighten like the right side, and that's it. And then torque these things to spec, and that's it. That's really it. You just take your time, go around. These bolts should go in by hand, so I would not use a power tool on this. So just thread them in by hand, and you should be good to go. So it's a process. It's a bunch of bolts. So I'm gonna get these in, and I'll come right back with you guys. So with that said, guys, that's it. You just torque these, put the bolts in, torque them down to spec, 7 foot-pounds, so not a lot. And that's it. You get it done, and that's how you do your oil pan. So all in all, not a difficult job. The hardest part I would say is just separating the old pan from the block, because it's in there with that sealant. So that's going to be a wrap for today. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and you know, hopefully we learned something new as always on this channel. So with that said, I'm going to have to get the car in the garage. We're going to have to drop the old engine and get this new one installed. Probably not going to do a lot of filming there because you know, we have multiple videos on the channel removing an engine, but it's always fun putting in a new engine and getting it started up and having that on camera. So that's the plan for how we're gonna film here. So with that said, guys, thank you for watching, thank you for subscribing, and I'll see you on the next one.